Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om, I bow to the Lord Vasudeva. Joy to you, friends. We've been talking about death and rebirth. And I was about to tell you a story, but the time ran out, so I want to tell it now. There was a couple who came to Yogananda and said they wanted to have a spiritual child. So he told them, he gave them a photograph of a person who he felt was ready to be reborn, a very spiritual person. He said, meditate on this person. And he said, during this time that you meditate, don't have any sexual contact with each other. Just keep your minds uplifted and call to him and invite him into your home. And Yogananda said that they did so, and what the soul that was born to them after that practice was that very soul. Now you can believe me or not, it's easy to disbelieve, but what my guru told me I have always found to be true. The thing is that the thought with which you go is very important. This is why I talked also recently about the final exam of death. If you go thinking of this world, you'll be reborn. There was one story Yogananda told about a man who was ready to die, and he called to his son. He said, the oil lamp is getting low. You've got to fill it with oil again. Here the man was already, the oil in his own lamp was going low, and he was worried about the lamp in the house. So people who have this kind of attachment to the world, they go grieving for the world, and they come back very quickly. And those, on the other hand, who, as it says later in the Gita, those who worship the lower gods go to those gods. And this is a part of what it means, those who worship lower states of consciousness. And those who worship me come to me. That's why at the time of death, it's very important to think of God, think of high truths, and you will be drawn to those truths. You are drawn in the astral world to those spheres, those planets, you might say, where people are drawn of similar vibration. Here in this world, you have heterogeneous vibrations. A criminal may be born or may live next door to a saint. You just can't tell. The world is a mishmash of different types of people. But in the astral world, they are separated by vibrations, so that artistic souls will go to planets where people are basically artistic. Those who love music will be drawn to planets where they like music the most, and so on. And those who live darkly, they will go to dark spheres. There are many spheres, some light, increasingly light, until you reach the very high spheres, like Hiranyaloka, on which Yogananda says Sri Yukteswar is now living. But in the lower spheres also there are increasingly dark realms. This one person, she used to like rock music. This is a very interesting story, and please take it for at least seriously. You take it as you like, but take it seriously. This woman who used to love rock music was very depressed and tried to commit suicide. And this is a true story. At least she wrote her book as if it were true. And she said that she tried to commit suicide, but fortunately failed. But during the time when she was out, she went to a very low sphere where everybody was a suicide. And she saw people dressed in different garbs according to different eras. There was even somebody dressed in ancient Greek costume and in the French costume of the 18th century, 17th century, and so on. And she said they were all just sort of never looking at each other. And she saw that there was no joy there. And there was a little light that the angels tried to bring down, and most of them just ignored it. But she saw that light and welcomed it, and so she was brought back to life because of it. But she said that the vibration of that area was exactly like the vibration that she had enjoyed so much with rock and roll music. if you think about it, it's a boom, boom, it's a very heavy and very lower chakra type of music. I would take that quite seriously myself, because I must say that I don't like being around that kind of music. It seems to pull the mind down. The kind of music you enjoy, the kind of music you listen to, is going to have a great effect on you after you leave this body. There was a very interesting story of a nun in France, and I think a couple of hundred years ago, who she used to go into the astral world, and she would see people who would ask her to give messages to people in this world. And some of those people, most of them, she didn't know who they were, but they always checked out with somebody who had actually lived before. And she found that there were some of these people in hell that she went to. She went to all regions, but many were in hell. And they were nuns. And I couldn't help wondering, why would a nun go to hell? And the explanation given was that they weren't completely obedient to their superiors. Now this signifies to me that it's your state of mind that takes you down. It's not some cosmic judge. You put yourself in hell. If you think that you've done wrong and you castigate yourself, even a good person can go to a low region. I remember there was a student of Yogananda. It's not a disciple, but a student, an architect, Mr. Brockway, Ernest Brockway. And I went to his bed when he was in the hospital just before he died. And he was lying there sort of slightly unconscious, and he said, "Oh, I've done many wrong things in my life. I've done many wrong things in my life." And he kept repeating this, and I told Master what he'd said. And Master looked very sad. He said he shouldn't have said that. And then he said he's been coming around. So Master had seen his astral body, and his contact with Master had lifted him. But Master also meant that when you have that kind of consciousness and you regret what you've done, and then that will pull you down. If, on the other hand, you bluster and say, "I didn't do wrong," when you know you did do wrong, your inner knowledge will be much more important than your bluster. You will be drawn to that state of consciousness that you have lived. In that Brigu that I talked about, that told about the lives of future people, and I was mentioned there, and it talked about my life in the time of Kurukshetra, and it said that because of the good deeds I had done, I had given much money away and helped to create water holes for animals and so on. And it said because of that, he lived for hundreds of years in the astral world. It didn't mention because of the yoga practice, but I'm sure that must have been a large part of it too. But yogis will not necessarily come back, stay a long time. They may want to get back here quickly and get on with the job of getting rid of this delusion, because the astral world too, it may be heaven in Christian terminology, Swarg in Hindu, but it's not the final. You want to go beyond that. Don't be satisfied. I know that I read some of the Christian theologian who said that for a Christian to live, to merge with God and not have an ego would be unthinkable. Well, maybe unthinkable to you, but it's what Jesus Christ taught. He said, to know me, you must drown yourself in me. He who would lose his life will find it. No, there's much that the Christian teachers don't know about the teachings of their own scripture and their own Messiah. Joy to you, friends.